What if a so-called small African nation shattered the world's expectations and left the West reeling in silence? Such a deal is unheard of for any African nation, let alone one the world thought it could dismiss. Hospitals, energy grids, industries. Burkina Faso is now building its own future, no longer at the whim of foreign donors, but alongside a partner who values its potential. For generations, Burkina Faso has been branded as powerless, dependent on Western charity, ignored by global giants, dismissed as irrelevant. But that era just ended. Burkina Faso has now inked an $80 billion partnership with Saudi Arabia, and its impact is echoing from Paris to Washington to Brussels. In Paris, the corridors of power have gone still. In Washington, officials scramble to respond. In Brussels, confusion and disbelief ripple through every office. The West is not just surprised, they are shaken. Because this is not aid, not a predatory loan. This is a monumental investment forged on equal footing with mutual benefit and no hidden strings. Now, let us rewind and uncover why this is not simply a deal, but a revolution on the rise. Already, this agreement is sending shockwaves far beyond Africa's borders. It is not just transforming Burkina Faso's prospects. It is upending the balance of power between continents. Western leaders are uneasy. If Burkina Faso can achieve this, who will follow? What if more African nations realize they can bargain from a place of strength and pride? The stakes could not be higher. Ignore this moment, and the opportunity for true African power may slip away. But if this spark ignites a movement, we could see a continental rebirth, where partnership replaces dependency, and Africa claims its rightful place in the world. To understand how Burkina Faso pulled this off, we have to look at the forces that shaped its journey and the global dynamics that made this moment possible. For centuries, Africa was ordered to kneel, to accept what little was offered, and to believe that true power belonged elsewhere. Western powers spun the narrative Africa must depend on foreign gifts, survive on loans with impossible terms, and sign contracts that always favored someone else. The rules were never fair. In this rigged game, Africa handed over treasure and resources, while the West pocketed the profits and left the continent burdened by debt and disappointment. Aid and loans were never about mutual progress. They were tools of control. The World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, the European Union all handed down the same ultimatum: accept our conditions or be left with nothing. African leaders, desperate to keep their countries afloat, often gave away both resources and dignity for a fleeting promise of stability. Consider the case of Zambia in the 1980s. When copper prices crashed, the country turned to the International Monetary Fund for help. The loans came with harsh demands: cut public spending, devalue the currency, and sell off state-owned companies. Instead of prosperity, Zambia sank deeper into poverty and lost control of its own resources. Stories like this played out across the continent, locking nations into cycles of dependency. History is filled with examples. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, European empires divided Africa at the Berlin Conference, carving up the continent without a single African voice at the table. Colonial treaties forced countries like Nigeria, Ghana, and Kenya to supply raw materials and labor, with almost no benefit returning to their people. Even after independence, the story continued. The International Monetary Fund and World Bank imposed strict loan conditions that forced countries to cut essential services, privatize state assets, and open markets to foreign companies. The result? Africa's wealth flowed outward, while schools and hospitals at home crumbled. Then, the world changed. Burkina Faso, a nation often counted out, chose defiance over desperation. Under the fearless Captain Ibrahim, they refused to beg for scraps or bow to old masters. Instead, they forged a groundbreaking alliance, an $80 billion partnership with Saudi Arabia negotiated on fair and equal terms. This deal is different. There are no hidden clauses from the World Bank, no restrictive demands from the International Monetary Fund, no quiet threats from Brussels. It is not a package of charity with strings attached, nor a loan designed to keep Burkina Faso dependent. It is a new kind of partnership, built on respect, shared ambition, and the promise of real, sustainable growth. To understand the shockwaves, we must look closer at the forces determined to keep Africa in its place, and why this New Deal threatens their hold. So, why is the West rattled? What is it about this $80 billion deal that unsettles old powers? And could it truly be the spark that transforms Africa's future? $80 billion is not a statistic. It is a battering ram aimed at centuries of exploitation, opening the gates for something unprecedented. For the first time, an African nation is not a spectator, but the main player. This agreement places Burkina Faso at the heart of the story, not at the edge. It sends a clear signal across the continent and to the world that Africa is claiming the right to chart its own course. If this gamble pays off, the cycle of dependence and disappointment may finally be shattered. But the risk is immense. Falling back would mean renewed poverty, lost pride, and another generation condemned to wait for change. This partnership between Burkina Faso and Saudi Arabia is sweeping in its ambition. It stretches from roads and bridges to hospitals and clinics, from solar farms and green energy to farmland, minerals, and advanced technologies. It is a master plan for transformation, one that arrived without the old chains of dependency. Inside each negotiation, Saudi Arabia treated Burkina Faso as an equal. There were no patronizing lectures, no hidden debt traps, and no demands that would erode sovereignty. For the first time, Africa was not cast as a beggar, but as a peer, setting terms, not pleading for scraps. Let us imagine the specifics. Under this partnership, brand new hospitals will rise in cities like Bobo-Dioulasso and Ouagadougou, offering modern healthcare to millions who have long traveled hours for basic treatment. Solar power plants, funded by Saudi investment, will bring reliable electricity to rural villages for the first time, lighting homes and powering the dreams of students who once studied by candlelight. Roads and bridges will connect farmers to markets, allowing them to sell their harvests for fair prices instead of being trapped by middlemen. Now the Western world reels. In corporate boardrooms, anxiety crackles as the true impact sets in. Governments in Paris, Washington, and Brussels scramble, their emergency meetings tinged with disbelief and fear. They are terrified of the precedent, because if Burkina Faso can rewrite the rules, so can Mali, so can Niger, Congo, Tanzania, Ethiopia. One by one, the continent could shatter the old order. This is what keeps Western leaders awake, the fear that their system, built on exploitative aid and one-sided loans, may collapse. Their grip on Africa's resources, labor, and policies is no longer secure. Africa is finished waiting for permission. It is seizing agency and forging its own path. What happens next could reshape the fate of a continent. The world is watching. In Burkina Faso and across much of Africa, the mood is electric. Gone are the days of humiliating negotiations over crumbs disguised as aid. No more foreign dignitaries arriving with empty promises and veiled threats. Instead, people watch new hospitals rise, jobs appear, highways link villages and cities. They see the first light of true sovereignty, the ability to build, to decide, and to own their future. But power never shifts quietly. In the shadows, rival interests are already mobilizing, ready to test the strength of this new order. Yet the stakes are razor sharp. Should the West reassert control or sabotage this movement, Africa's best shot at genuine self-determination could vanish. But if this new model endures, the foundations of the old system begin to crack, and a new chapter opens not just for Burkina Faso, but for all of Africa. Consider the example of the Grand Inga Dam project in the Democratic Republic of Congo. For decades, foreign investors promised financing, but imposed terms that would have left Congo with little control or profit, The project stalled. If Burkina Faso's model succeeds, future deals could be forged on terms that protect Africa's interests, ensuring that massive projects generate local jobs, retain profits, and build homegrown expertise. Picture an Africa transformed. Imagine highways stretching from Dakar to Addis Ababa, modern hospitals in every city, and not a single nation waiting for foreign rescue. That future is within reach. With $80 billion surging into Burkina Faso, the door swings open to energy independence, world-class schools, and an intricate network of roads and rails linking African capitals at last. Envision African minerals and crops no longer shipped out raw, but refined in bustling local factories. For the first time, the continent can build its own supply chains, launch its own airlines, and erase the colonial borders that once divided its people for the benefit of outsiders. Africa can finally keep its wealth and shape its own progress. Picture a future where a mother in Ouagadougou can take her sick child to a nearby hospital, knowing that medicines are stocked and doctors are present, not because of foreign donations, but because her country invested in its own health system. Picture a young engineer in Bobo Dioulasso helping to design solar farms or manage railway construction, gaining skills that can be exported across the region. This is no longer a distant dream. It is a tangible outcome of true partnership. This is the dawn of a new era, Africa commanding the entire value chain, from mines to markets, from farms to finished goods. Imagine the pride of boarding an African-built jet, powered by African fuel, carrying technology designed and assembled on African soil. The impact of this deal radiates far beyond Burkina Faso. Niger, Mali, Congo, Tanzania, and Ethiopia now see the path forward. The dominoes are falling. Other nations scramble for their own sovereign partnerships. Yet the old powers will not watch quietly. Prepare for waves of propaganda, efforts to fracture African unity, and sabotage lurking in the shadows. But this time, Africa is more vigilant, more connected, and more determined than ever before. History's hard lesson remains. Unity brings power, and vigilance ensures survival. History offers parallels. In the 1960s, the Asian tigers, Singapore, South Korea, Taiwan, and Hong Kong, rose from poverty to prosperity by forging bold partnerships, insisting on local value addition, and refusing to be mere suppliers of cheap labor. They invested heavily in education, infrastructure, and industry, transforming their economies and earning global respect. Burkina Faso's partnership could be the spark that ignites a similar transformation in Africa. If African nations hold firm, choosing collaboration over rivalry, vision over suspicion, they stand on the brink of true sovereignty, a self-determined future beyond anyone's reach. But if the continent splinters, if old egos and rivalries resurface, the exploiters will return, and the old cycle of dependency will begin anew. The stakes are unmistakable. This is Africa's moment to claim dignity, power, and its rightful place in the world. This is not merely a triumph for Burkina Faso. It is a clarion call for every African nation and every citizen yearning for true sovereignty. There are practical steps to safeguard this progress. African countries can form regional blocs to negotiate better deals collectively, much like the European Union did after World War II. They can invest in education, train a new generation of engineers, doctors, and entrepreneurs, and share technology across borders. Civil society and media must hold leaders accountable, ensuring that the benefits of new investments reach ordinary people, not just elites. The first lesson rings out: authentic independence is never a gift from foreign hands. It must be seized by those bold enough to envision a different future, who unite with shared purpose, and who act with unwavering resolve. The era of waiting for outside approval is finished. Every African, regardless of origin or circumstance, must recognize their worth and dignity. At each negotiation, demand not just a seat at the table, but respect as an equal. Insist that your nation's needs are not an afterthought, but the foundation of every agreement. When you stand tall, the world is forced to acknowledge your strength. African leaders now face a new and urgent test. Sabotage, misinformation, and relentless pressure from former colonial masters will not vanish in a day. Yet, history is shaped by those who keep their eyes fixed on lasting change, not fleeting praise. The world is watching, so must every leader's conscience. But this movement is not the domain of presidents and ministers alone. Everyday people, farmers, artisans, students, women and men from every corner stand to reap the greatest rewards if this model takes root. Imagine the birth of new industries, schools that ignite true learning, clinics that heal with dignity, and a pride that cannot be stolen or sold. So, as the world holds its breath, the question remains, will this spark kindle a lasting fire or fade into memory? Still, the path ahead will be tested. Old powers, threatened by Africa's rising self-belief, will deploy every tactic to divide and discourage. They may spread rumors, stoke distrust, or offer hollow deals. But unity remains Africa's greatest shield. When people stand as one, no outside force can unravel what has been started. History is watching. Will you help keep the fire alive? The risk is stark. Lose focus or fracture, and Africa may slip back into dependency's grip. Stay united and determined, and a future of prosperity and pride is within reach, not just for Burkina Faso, but for every nation ready to embrace its own destiny. To answer that, we must look beyond celebration and confront the challenges ahead, because real change demands relentless commitment at every level. Burkina Faso has lit the way, but the journey has only begun. Burkina Faso's unprecedented $80 billion partnership with Saudi Arabia is more than a headline. It is a thunderclap that echoes across continents. For generations, Africa was cast as a spectator, its fate scripted by foreign hands. Today, that script is torn up. A new story begins, written by those it truly belongs to. Do not mistake this deal for aid. There are no hidden strings, no quiet debts. This is a partnership forged from mutual ambition, a shared leap into the future, built on respect and dignity. It signals the dawn of an African era defined by unity, sovereignty, and the audacity to dream beyond boundaries set by others. What practical steps can be taken? First, ensure transparency in how the $80 billion is spent. Publish budgets, audit projects, and create citizen oversight committees. Second, prioritize local hiring and training so that the new hospitals, factories, and power stations create skilled jobs for Burkinabe youth. Third, build partnerships across Africa to share expertise, pool resources, and strengthen bargaining power against larger global players. Fourth, invest in research and innovation so that Africa is not just a consumer of technology, but a creator of it. But the world is not idle. Old powers are rattled, their grip slipping, but they are watching, waiting for a misstep. The true challenge starts now. If Africa fails to seize this moment, dependency and exploitation may return even more fiercely. But if we rise, this victory can become a blueprint, a guide for every nation determined to shape its own destiny. The torch is in our grasp. Will you carry it forward? The next move is ours, and the world is holding its breath. Now is the hour for Africans everywhere to step forward. The age of waiting for change is over. It is time to become the change. Let this spark ignite a movement for economic and political self-determination, spreading from Ouagadougou to every corner of the continent. Let us give our children a future shaped by African hands, African ambition, and African resolve.